Kathy Vick, Deeply Awake, Chats 2017. I want to start out by saying, I know. There have been some of my videos that I am going, j'accuse, and then explaining what's wrong with other people, or with other mentalities, or with, I don't know, whole institutions, or, I don't know, lots of things. Am I being a false spiritual teacher because I have opinions that are perhaps clear? And I don't know. Was I in full awareness? Well, I don't know. It's up to you to judge that, I guess. I think a lot of it is prescient myself, but highly warring. Now, what I want to say is that the last 2 records I did, recordings, they carried different kind of energy. Did you notice? I did. And then, I don't know, a couple days later I had a vision in the morning, and then I've been working with that one ever since. And I've had lots of other ones, but I want to tell you about this one. I woke up and this is what I saw. I saw myself, and I saw myself. And in between myself was an old western fence, wooden fence. So, me and me, looking at each other. And yes, my fingers are as straight as I can get them. God, arthritis. So, anyway. I love my fingers. I'm looking at myself. And it was really physical. I mean, that was me. And I was both of them. And I wasn't sitting by my other self on a bench. Standing up, facing myself, and a fence in between. Ooh. Well, that was a harbinger of much. This has been the time of no more fence sitting. This has been a time of closures, of exclusions, of no. But it hasn't just been no. No, thank you. I don't think this is going to work out. It's it had to be done with really. It was just as bad as just horror. It wasn't as bad as the last time, but with accusations of being bad and perverse and wrong and not acceptable and God. So that's tough. And because you're being invited to weigh yourself against a really damning version of yourself, and it's usually done by someone in authority or someone you love. And so the only thing you want is, they've set it up so the only thing that you need is their love and approval. And then they've said, well, this is what I think of you. And there's no redeeming this. Go away. Well, the only thing that you can change in that equation is your love. That's it. You can't change another person's mind. And if anyone is going to hold that kind of thinking, why would you want to be around them anyway? So the question is, why do you want to be around them? That's the question. What on earth would possess you to be attracted to that? Well, it's exquisite pain. And sometimes it's, not even, you don't even know it's coming. But when it happens, And I think that I mention it because I think it's happening to a lot of people. A lot of people are going through big yeses and nos. And some people are saying no very nicely. And other people are saying no very defensively. And very slimily. And I know of a grand poobah who does just that. He goes by Trumpety Trump. So I think that it's really okay to say no to people. And it's really hard to learn how to do it correctly. And it's so much easier to slime each other and to threaten each other than to say, oh, wow, it's disappointing. And there's no changing your mind? No. And it would be really uncomfortable if I stayed. Oh yeah, we'd make it uncomfortable. And you said you cared? You said I mattered and stuff? Yeah, well, we weren't being truthful. And maybe we changed our minds, but whatever. What's done is done. Just, something that you did is just like, it just isn't working, it's not compatible. Well, that's a really, really good way of putting it. And, the person on the receiving end can go off the deep end. I know that's not too far from where I was. I don't like to hear no. And sometimes hearing no, it in certain circumstances is so unthinkable. And it comes as a shock, even though it shouldn't be a shock. And it consider when someone dies suddenly, or slowly, but they finally die. Well, that's a big deal. There are big, big, big emotions with that. And everybody is allowed to grieve for, I don't know. How long is fashionable right now? Probably 6 weeks. But, it's there are those kind of deaths. There are some things in life that are far worse than death. Come on. And being excluded from a group or a person who pledged their support or their love. And maybe it's because it's an entirely mutual feeling, but still, ay. And I mention this because I think that it's important to mention this when we're talking about freedom and independence. That implies that someone has been separated from, doesn't it? And in the history of the country, there was a big fight about that. And a winner and a loser, or whatever. So, I just think that I think that we can be gentle. And maybe that just comes from being gentle to ourselves. Because I think that sometimes we put a lot of worth or a lot of importance upon an endeavor or a person or an identity. Because well, sometimes it just feels really good. And it feels really safe. And it feels like home. And then suddenly it's not. Suddenly what seemed like a good fit, well, that was the honeymoon phase. And the gaps are too wide here. It's it's going to require a lot of really good communication to make it work. And that's usually when most people go, yeah, no, I don't want to do this. And sometimes it's just really aversive, and it turns out to not be a good thing. I mean, I think I'm describing a lot of things. The 90-day probationary period, dating, lots of things. So, I think that what I'm talking about is kind of high level, just because there's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of things, revenge. Oh, come on, let's not do that, please. What? They're not allowed to say no? You're going to punish them for exerting their free will? Don't do that. Revenge is very, very, very low level. Very immature. It's completely missing the point. And disowning responsibility. But, the thing is that when you're being dealt a blow, that's not the time to say, oh, this is my responsibility. No. That comes later. Grief is an important process, and like I've said, I think that that's the way you see the void. You go all the way down, and there are other ways to get there. Don't get me wrong. I have gotten higher and come to know more through bliss and rapture and delight and joy, and it was rapture. But I also know that I have pierced veils where I've gone with terror, with sadness, with depression, with a lot of things. So I think that, having a range emotionally is good, but what I've noticed is that it feels like the amperage is up with people's emotions. Everyone is really feeling a lot. And a lot of these things can feel kind of life and death and just really intense. I think that I needed to mention people need to drink more water. The information I'm getting is that we are losing water more than usual at night, or when we're sleeping. Because when we're sleeping, what's going on is we are doing a lot of changes. And there are temperature changes as a result of these cellular changes. And they're not so much from the thermoregulation center. They're from electromagnetic shifts and amperage increases and tweaks. And that creates sometimes just surface heat on one area, sometimes core increase of heat. But this results in sweat and also more exhalation of water. That's why you might be walking around feeling really dry and wondering what the heck's going on. Well, sure, it's summertime, but you might want to consider just increasing your water, because it may possibly be this going on. Who knows? There are losses and there are changes, but I mean, I'm always struck with the truth of it, that I don't have to say no very often. I don't say no very often. I really don't. I'm a yes girl. But when I say no, thank God for my no. And it's a hard no. And yeah, sometimes it comes after I've heard no, but not always. And I'm always glad. There are times when I go boop and everything falls apart. And I really I keep going back to that moment before I went boop, because I didn't want this. No, this was not what I ordered. No. I wanted to be done with this. I didn't want the mess. No, can't we go back? Yeah. But I think that being able to say no is really important. I mean, think about it. Think about some of the big choices, like where you went to school, or what you studied, or your first job. Was there a choice involved? Could he have done one thing or the other? Well, I don't know. When I do the math, that means that one person heard yes and one person heard no. Did their lives fall apart? Well, I don't know. What did you promise them? Did you promise them the moon? Did you promise them your support? Did you promise them your service? Well, if you didn't, say la vie. You're allowed. It's how we handle these things. And all the I don't know. I don't know. It gets so confusing. So I want to say something about this independence stuff. For Independence Day, well, I have a thinking that it's probably got a lot to do with being independent from, well, it's kind of weird. Because, alright, when I think about some of these things that have gone on, where, I don't know, it would appear that some of it is a bit dastardly, or at least just not cool. And I look at it and go, well, alright, but I could be seen as dastardly and uncool in, I don't know, about 12 million different situations. And that's just this lifetime. So it's like this weird reflectivity thing is happening. And it's making the whole exercise of looking at other people with anything other than neutrality really uncomfortable. And all I can say is, high five those angels. That's really nice. Because it really came home finally, and that's why I think that I had that vision at the beginning, is that if you're looking at yourself and you're saying, oh, not only is that wrong, but here's why. And this is why it's sinking up the joint. This is how it's sinking up the joint. And this is how you can fix it. Well, that's good. Somebody had to say it. And I said it in terms that were, a little bit more esoteric than the average Joe. And I think I probably set the record straight on a few ways of thinking. But so much arguing. So much justifying one side to the other. Oh my God. And then finally just realizing, well, if I have to look at myself from across a fence, if that's the setup, then I have a couple of options here. Alright, because, okay, I'll give you this vision. Today, at the pharmacy, I'm waiting around, and I don't have my phone, and the magazines all, I don't know, they just didn't grab my attention. So, and I'm tired. So I went ahead and just went, and I love doing that, especially in a public place, because I then can immediately hear these clusters of conversation, but they're all at once, but I can hear all of them individually, but I can hear them all at once, and I can hear them in different, it's really fun. So it's happening, I'm hearing all these different conversations and feeling into everybody, and oh my God, it's so fun. And then I have this I flash on a playground, a big sandbox, and kids, and all of these people were once in a sandbox playing. We all were, and we were just as full of belief that this was real when we were playing with our toys as when we're talking about our finances, or the loved one our medicine is for. But oh my God, how high stakes everything got, didn't it? It's almost like those soldiers came to life, kinda. Sometimes it's almost like we're playing cowboy and Indian. It's funny. But there was one guy who had a friend, and this guy was so authentically happy. And everywhere he went, he was worry-free, and he was in a wheelchair. He was the patient, and he was so funny, and he was making people laugh around him, and he added to the mix, and I thought, I don't know, when I was a kid, that's what it was about. I just wanted to be around people who were nice, and who got along, and who were, well, for me, who were willing to sit down with me and talk with me one-to-one, because I wasn't too much of a social butterfly. No, I still am not. But still, I mean, it's the, don't you go to the playground and have fun? What's recess for but to laugh and play? And maybe scare yourself, or maybe scare your friend. And then you go in and you eat, and then you do your day. But it's like, all of a sudden, it came to me really, really hard. What we're doing here, we're playing. And yeah, it's so life and death. When there's so many numbers involved. And there's so many onlookers and stuff. And there's so much high drama. And there's so many players. But we're just kids in a playground. This is a ride. This is play. It's designed that way. We designed it that way. So when Sandra Walter, her last piece was just really, really soothing, because she talked about primary, secondary, and tertiary timelines. And it helped for me to gain a certain linear perspective, or not a framework, so I could understand things that are not entirely linear, but have a basis there and reside within a human experience. She explained that there's primary, secondary, and tertiary timelines. I'll post her video in the comments and on my website, but she explained that the primary timeline, of course, is a large one that is encompassing. And it basically, what it does energetically is it just sets the reality. It is what it is. And from all else flows. And it is neither present, past, or future. It is all, it's a primary timeline. And that is the Ascension timeline. And from there grow secondary and then tertiary timelines. And the secondary timelines I will let her talk about, and what I understand is the tertiaries have dissolved. And I think that's abundantly true in my life. It was a very profound experience to hear her talk about that. And then to remind myself and be reminded by so many beautiful voices that I listened to very thankfully during this time for guidance and checking in and new ideas and confirmation, as we all do, I hope, was that, we set this stuff up in advance, guys. And I listened to an hour and a half of Dolores Cannon talking about the New Earth. And that's a concept I've just kind of been, I don't know. So there's the crappier Earth the D-bags go to, and then there's a nice, fancy Jetsons Earth that the cool people go to. I don't think I like that. But it's not like that. That's what the teachers talked about so long ago. There's gonna be people who just aren't in your life anymore. And Dolores says, so people would say, so why can't I just call them? So they're not my life, but I can just call them. Dolores' response is, well, the thing is, you're not going to want to. And that's the split. That's the split. That's the different earths. What's happening to you in your life, not anyone else's. That tells you what timeline you're in. And I know I had a change. It's so obvious. It's like being in the Twilight Zone at certain points. It's like, yeah. This is something else. This is something different. And so if I'm going to be looking at myself across this fence, why not make the experience a pleasant one? And so what do you do if one starts to argue? And you just want to have a pleasant day and chat about the clouds, if nothing else, or the beauty of that person's eyes, or whatever. And they go, well, fuck you. You piece of shit. This is what I think of your comments about the cumulus clouds today. What do you do with that? Oops. Well, you better learn how to diffuse it and not take it personal. How can you not if you know it's you saying those things to yourself? How are you able to laugh at that when that person knows all your stuff and is going up on you and calling you all kinds of poopy names, and you didn't ask for it? What do you do? Well, that's what Crine was referring to. The new human. The new human stands and listens, and as the litany occurs, the new human 2727 listens, and the first thought they have is, well, could this be true? Which is exactly where I go. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's pretty accurate. And then the new human looks at the person who just had a spasm of pain and says, I can tell you're really having a bad day. And I know that you're hurting. And I'm not minimizing your pain. I know that you feel I'm the cause of it. And I can see why you would think that. Because I really have felt, or I would own feelings, really have felt X, or I really have considered doing X, or I really have done X. So your sense of craziness, you should get rid of that. Because it is true. You know, those kind of conversations can really change lives. As can just letting someone off the hook. And I think that also involves, if you're feeling really needy and a person has said no, go away, then letting that person off the hook, understanding that that's kind of the last stage, that's the acceptance stage. After the anger and the depression and the bargaining and the denial, to death. So, I'm a shadow worker, so I'm going to talk about loss, but I'm going to talk about you just can't have freedom and independence without having walked away from something probably a little bit bloodied. And I think in this case, really, honestly, I feel like I'm kind of walking away, or at least in a truce with myself. who would bloody me up and try to scare me. One of the things I worked with, one of the motifs I worked with this self and fence thing, was overlay all the, cultural stuff and all the historical stuff and all the TV references and all that stuff, fashion knowledge, whatever. And all this snarl, fuck you! The government's fucked and I'm fucked and my whatever. And then here's this, field saying, yep, I know. Yeah, it's kind of fucked right now. It's supposed to be. But, come on, look who you're talking to. Remember what's going on here. How about that? Hey, how about that? Hey. And what I've been noticing is this effect that Cryon's been talking about, that in the energy, negative energy is going to mirror back on the person and then intensify. And I noticed that today as I was driving home and I was thinking a thought about something or someone, and it was, I don't know, kind of like, that fuckhead or whatever like that. Whatever. And something stupid like that. And then I'm thinking to myself, yeah, well, I've done all those things. And this just feels so awful. And I don't even know who's who anymore. I don't even know what's what anymore. And I think at this point, the only thing I can do, to be quite honest with you, is to just release all of it. So, this is about preference. This is about having finally been able to say no, and to set my Merkaba. That was one of the things I did with this energy of dealing with the male and female, and I feel so much better. So much better. So, realizing that of course there's going to be losses. Okay, if you're in 5th grade, you're going to grieve the I don't know, your bassinet. No, if you're getting a double bed, no. Why would you do that? So it's like when nothing good has come yet, where you can't recognize anything in your life as good, and everything else is gone because you just suddenly graduated, you just suddenly got promoted through the bottom falling out, which is what that is. Well, that's just that's about the best time in the world to be alive, because you're in the void. And so it's a really discombobulating time, though, and it can be hard, but it's when people make their move. And I have not met many people who hold a great deal of light who didn't have some sort of crisis of faith, or dark night of the soul, or moment of truth, or stripping away that is life altering. And that's just one of the things that is part of the deal. And I don't know, maybe that's part of the human condition. I'm not sure. I don't know if everyone feels that or not. I have no idea. So I really think that the time to snarl is done. And it means that when I am feeling judgmental or mean, or what is that but just feeling wounded? And what is that but just not understanding a few things, or having lost my way, or just being freaking lazy? It's laziness. That kind of thinking and those kind of feelings, that's incontinence. It's not really thinking things through. And that's where I'm headed. That's, I guess you could say, kind of neutral. But it's where I prefer to be. And I realized that today, it's really okay for me to just really the people I like, and be satisfied with who I have in my life. Ooh, it's a lot. I'm very blessed, and it is a good feeling to be there. So there's big yeses and big nos. There's big closures and big openings. There's opportunities, and there's the opportunity to get stuck in the grief. And but I do still believe it's more of a propellant than anything else. It's a cleanser, and is part of our process. And I think it can be really hard to take sometimes. I think that the most suffering I've ever felt is when I've been grieving. It's really very hard, and you can grieve for so many things. So it is nice to be gentle. It is nice to smile and to not snarl, and remember that everyone's going through a lot. You know, when I mentioned that the summer solstice, I really felt like people's hair was on fire. Winter solstice, completely different energy. And I feel into it now, and it feels so good. It's surprising. It's surprising. It's very natural, and it feels very familiar, but it's surprising. Because it's real. It cannot be faked. And it's genuine. And it's there. And I don't know what that is, but it feels so good. And as I've said, you know, the summer solstice was like my hair was on fire. And I've heard from Kaipacha, I've heard this is really just a very explosive time. And so minding one's tongue and not snarling, really important. Remember, you're talking to yourself, even if it's to your persecutor. That's one of the things that really brought me home, was remembering that all the teachers I've had in my life, they were there because I asked them to be there, and they agreed because they love me and I love them. And everyone who I've had conflict with, or who doesn't like me, or who thinks I'm a bad person, or who thinks very highly of me, or who emulates me, or who listens to me, or who hates me. Well, that's actually by agreement and request too. And sometimes it's the ones who we have the greatest conflict with. Who else would we want to entrust the wounding of our spirits to? Or the simulated wounding of our spirits? Who? Some, you know, I don't know, assigned archangel? Or your very, 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 very best friend. So, you know, everybody becomes your guru at a certain point. And no hardship is a hardship. And no loss is a loss. And all feelings are valid. Those deep feelings of sadness, they propel you to the light. And the bliss propels you further into that beautiful, beautiful light. And with that, I think I'll close. I think I'm done. This is a lot longer than I expected, but it's like the fourth of four, and it's probably the most complex, but it's probably the most soft too, and I prefer that. So, all right. Thank you. Namaste.